Boom. Well, that will take us live. We are back with Leave It to Deever. Yeah, we're jumping right into it. Today I've got somebody. We've actually known each other for quite some time, just in passing. But I've got Dan Rawls in the studio today. Probably, I'd say, one of the most busy connectors, I think, that's doing it here in Utah. We're going to hear a lot about it, about what the things that you do, because I've watched you just working, and what I've really liked in my journey of learning how to do connections is finding out what an active business it is to be a connector. It doesn't just fall into your lap. But first off, Dan, just kind of tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you came to be here.
Well, thank you, Kyle. I'm from Tennessee and Atlanta, Georgia, from the South. Went to college in North Carolina, and that's kind of where I'm from geographically, and I love skiing. Started in Tennessee and North Carolina.
Is there a lot of skiing I would think there's no skiing down in the South.
It's about as big as your conference table, but it's there.
Little bunny slopes.
So, and I've just been an entrepreneur. I've only been in really 2 industries, 3 businesses total in 36 years, almost 36 years. In the health and wellness field. My company's in Memphis, Tennessee that I work for, and then another business I've owned franchises, and I've been in what I call lifestyle franchising. It's just kind of a phrase that I invented, and I just have a passion for helping small business, helping independent contractors, helping CEOs, owners. It's just a passion of mine.
Well, and even more so, you're such how would you describe yourself as a super connector? I mean, how do you? It's on your Instagram bio, but how would you explain yourself?
Well, it's interesting because that phrase connector, you know how the buzzwords and the things and all the feels, and that really just didn't even exist. I don't think until 6 or 7 years ago. I don't think you could even Google that word a decade ago and nothing would pull up probably. Yeah. But and then people just started labeling themselves for their resume, if you will, and people started giving me that title, like you're a super connector, and you just know how to connect everybody in the dots, and so to me, it's not just about business. When I was here in your office at an event 4 days ago, someone texted me something and said, "Hey, I'm one of my friends just." Was released from prison, and he's trying to get back on his feet. And I figured if there's anybody that knows anybody that could help him get back on his feet. And you heard my story in the meeting. I said, I texted him a men's ministry that started in Nashville, Tennessee a couple of years ago. Like, that has nothing to do with business for me, or there's nothing in it for me. It's just a genuine connection that I'm just a conduit to just kind of pay it forward and pass that information on. And I hope they'll take advantage of it. In the singles world, I've been playing matchmaker for probably 25 years. I've introduced people all the time. I'm introducing people. And
have you had any good results with the?
I've had some good results. Oh yeah.
Have you had some bad results?
Well, not bad, but I'm like, hey, if this doesn't work out, it's not
my fault.
It's like your driveway. It's not my asphalt. But so it's if you just listen to needs that people have. Inquiries. Hey, I'm trying to meet so-and-so. I'm trying to get connected to so-and-so. I always say that we have, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to learn to use them proportionately. I learned that 3 decades ago. And, if you just ask a couple of questions, well, who do you need to meet through me for your window business? Or, how are you trying to expand? What's your target market? And you have to dig deep and make people think about it. I'm not looking for a 30-second answer now. Get back to me tomorrow or next week, but really let me know, who do you need to meet through me? And there was a book many, many years ago I read called Swim with the Sharks. It's just popping in my head. Yep. And Harvey McKay wrote that book. And in the book, he says, meet people before you need them. Yeah. And I've always, that was my one sentence from that whole book. That's what I remember.
Yeah. That's actually, whenever I read books, that is how I do. I mean, I listen to audiobooks, obviously, but it's really 2 or 3 sentences that really stick out, and that's how I remember that book forever. And that's one of the real values in book collecting is you just have this thing that just pops up in that moment. I want to talk about how you started that process, because from what I understand, I was listening to you talk. You were a pretty introverted person, and you had to make some metamorphosis there. But first, I'm kind of curious. I've watched people. We both have a good friend, mutual friend, Sean Finnegan, who's a great connector. He's just, he just beams connectivity. But I've also watched some people take advantage of it. They just call him and say, hey, I need this, I need this, I need this. How, as you have this very special talent, how do you recognize if somebody is just taking from you? How do you deal with it? How do you not get taken advantage of for your unique ability?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm in a different league than Sean. Sean's up here.
Yep.
He owns a dozen businesses, and he has a huge commercial office space. And I'm a minnow compared to Sean. Let's just say that. But and I did meet Sean on a 3-way phone call almost 2 years ago, and I feel like I've known him for 10 years.
Yeah.
Just some of the things that he and I've done nothing to do with business-wise. So it's interesting that you talk about people taking advantage of. And so, we don't live in a giving world. We really live in a, hey, what's in it for me world.
Right.
And people will go to meetings all the time. And then, I would maybe follow up with them, and I would say, hey, so what'd you think about the meeting? What impressed you most? What was the best part of it? What was your most productive thing? Is there something you'd change about it? Well, I didn't really see how people in the group could really help me. And then I'm like it's a first date.
Yep.
It's a very first date with 35 business people, and you went. No one in the room except me or the lady that invited you, no one really knows you. You have to build your trust with people. And there's a phrase that I've taught for many years. I learned a long time ago that like, know, and trust, Like. You have to like someone before you even want to get to know them.
Yep.
And you have to get to know them before you're ever going to get to the trust fact. And you can like a lot of people, but I would always ask the audience or the room, do you like everybody that you know?
Of course not. Right?
No hands would go up. And I said, do you trust everybody that you like? No. So where is the connectivity? You have to start with like, know, and trust. But people want to jump right into trust of people that I've met. I've hosted events at my office building that I used to have, my space and meeting spaces and my place here. And, people would come to one event and they'd want me to open my Rolodex.
Yeah.
And like, hey, who do you know? And I'm just like, whoa, we just met. I mean, we would call that the mother test. I want to give you maybe a 1 or 2 Z introductions before I refer you to my mom. Because if you screw it up with my mom,
I'm in trouble with you.
Then I'm in real trouble. And I had that backfire. My parents are deceased, but I had that backfire with both of my parents, different people that I had referred for, maybe it was a house cleaning company or something like that. But I think so many people want to jump into premature solicitation, if you will. They just want to prematurely. They think that, oh, Kyle, he's a real successful young entrepreneur and he's crushing it and he's got all these businesses. And I look at you and I mean, my head spins when I look at you. I'm like, man, this guy's got way more going on than I'd ever could even imagine that I thought that I could do and have and be. And, you in our own mind, we put people on a pedestal, but the difference is this is your space. This is your second business. This is your other hobby. So you can't fake it. Nothing you do fakes it. There's someone that's retired that used to work with me and lives in Atlanta, Georgia. And he had a big 4-door sedan Mercedes and married and grown kids now. But at a red light, every now and then someone would pull up and have the same Mercedes. Yeah. And the guy would, have his sleeve like this and have his Rolex showing, and he'd be like that. And this guy that I know, Gary, who's a big mentor of mine back in the late 80s and early 90s, Gary would give him a thumbs up because he knew that his personal car was paid cash for.
Yeah.
And the other guys
wasn't.
Yeah. And so, I think the biggest pitfall that I see about people taking advantage of other people or trying to tap into their network is, it's time, it's trust, it's TIME, it's a 4-letter word. And I learned many years ago that trust is the only thing in our lives that takes the longest to build and the quickest to destroy.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of that. So I've kind of built a reputation. It's not, I didn't ask for it, but I just kind of built a reputation of the follow-up guy. People would just call, they'd say, he's the king at follow-up. He's the master at follow-up. And I was actually talking to someone the other day on a personal phone call. I hadn't talked to this guy in probably a year-ish. I call him about once a year. Very successful, just into personal development. And I called him, we were kind of joking, and he goes, man, you're just so good at that. And it kind of struck me, and there was a little bit of a tone to what I said comically, because I've known him over a decade. And I said, everybody tells me that, and you'd think after me calling them once a year for 2 or 3 years with no intent, I'm not selling them anything, I'm not trying to get them in anything, you'd think that the coin would turn and they would get a clue, and then they, 2, 3, 4 years later, they'd be the one reaching out. But people don't do it.
Yeah.
And they just don't do it. And there's a phrase I learned over 30 years ago, Kyle, that the fortune's in the follow-up.
Yeah.
And there's a huge element. It's not just another sales or marketing cliche. The fortune is in the follow-up. Someone stopped by my house yesterday, a friend that I've known. We've never really, it's not a business thing. He's been a professional speaker for 36 years, traveled all over the place. Okay, it's his full-time career. He's not a wannabe to get on stage, but this is his career. He met with someone that I don't think he's seen the guy in 20 years. Now, they've talked here and there. Well, he landed a $10,000 speaking gig by going and meeting that guy just before lunch. I didn't even know he was coming to town.
Yeah.
He goes, hey, I just landed. I got to rent a car. Love to stop by and have lunch and visit with you. And so we made a little video about, in his own words, I didn't say a word, about cultivating connections and how you really have to do it. And he goes, Dan, I'm good. If I can just get in front of people, I'm a closer. I can close people. But I'm not the best at follow-up. And I said, well, 20 years later, you've dripped and dripped and dripped and dripped. And we call that dripping on people, drip marketing. And then eventually something will come out of it. So if that's a long answer to your question.
No, it does answer a lot. One of the things that I struggle with, so my main business, Performance Windows, it's a door-to-door company. I don't really need to network with anybody. Myself and a partner, we built it up, and it runs the way it does. There's not really things that we could bring in to do different things. The way to make that business bigger is more knockers, more closers, more, maybe more products, whatever it is. But it hasn't forced me out of a comfort zone of needing to network, right? Whereas with Bad Bet, it's this whole new thing where now I'm selling this service to other business owners, right? And so I go to these networking events sometimes to go and meet with people, also just wanting to have my own network. And I don't really know how to approach it. I wouldn't call myself introverted, but I would say that I have this hard time with walking up and saying, hey, I'm Kyle. What do you do? I think to myself, is it rude to first thing say, hey, what do you do for work? But so much of my life is work that I talk about work. When you're going to a networking event, what's your preset in mind? I just want to meet people that I jive with. I want to meet people that could possibly use my business. How do you go into networking events?
Oh, I love that question, Kyle, because I'm sitting here right here with you, knowing, as I've gotten to know you just a little bit and seeing you speak on Saturday, that most people's goal when they go to an event is, what time am I leaving?
Yeah. Yeah, I did think
that's most people's goal.
Yeah.
And you have to get out of your comfort zone. When you're going to events, you really have to step outside of your comfort zone. And another thing is, you might have saw where I sat on Saturday. I purposely sat at a table where I didn't know anybody.
Yep.
And that's numero uno. That should be the first thing, because we gravitate, whatever kind of event it is, we gravitate to the one or two people, and we all do it.
Yeah, my problem is I'll take somebody with me and I'll go sit with them at a table by myself with them. I'm like, I don't want to go meet somebody new.
Yeah, and so we have to push ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, but it's also, we don't really live in the paper business card world. And I literally thought I would go to my coffin with a stack of my business cards in my pocket, in my coffin. And then 2 years ago, I learned of the most magical digital video business card on the planet, called Pitch 59, and it's literally revenue. Like, I cannot believe I'm publicly saying I don't have a business card on my pocket today.
Yeah.
Because I never thought I'd be that person. But I want to share that with you because it's kind of an awkward thing. You go up to someone, you're like, hey, here's a card. Whoa, Kyle, I didn't ask you for your card.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's kind of like, hey, can we exchange business cards? So, I just have to share this with you. So I have a friend, Brad, and he got me into these shoes.
Yeah.
And literally, I met Brad July 15 months ago.
Yeah.
Standing on the sidewalk outside of Sean's office. We didn't even go to the same event.
Yeah.
And I was walking back in, and he was just standing there waiting for somebody. And I was like, those are the coolest shoes I have ever seen, man. And we struck up a conversation.
Yeah.
And now I have 3 pairs of tap shoes because of Brad.
Yeah.
He held my hand and went to 2 of the sales with me just to get me in the door. And it's kind of like it's become an epidemic. He uses that as part of his brand. He has purple, like your pants. That's his brand. Brad wears purple something every day. But how did I meet Brad? I will never forget how I met Brad because it was so unique. It was outside the box. And so this is something that I think might help you and other listeners. I call it an opener. And I can tell you, I drove 14 hours to go spend 2 days with a guy that mentored me back. His name was Doug, many, many years ago. And he taught me this one phrase, and I've shared it with thousands. When you meet someone, you strike up a conversation, just say, hey, just out of curiosity. Hey, listen, just out of curiosity, I know you have that podcast thing. I've seen this on social, and you got, thousands of followers. Or how'd you get into that? Like, I thought you owned a window business. Or, is your business, just out of curiosity, is it residential or commercial? Where does the bulk of your business come from? Are you doing industrial buildings, warehouses? And so, but just out of curiosity, I use it all the time. All the time. In my personal life, I use it all the time. And so what happens is when you meet someone, think about this for a second. When you walk into a retail store, okay, if the person starts to approach you, what is our natural human response?
Yeah.
What do we say?
Yeah, I don't know. You
just
said,
looking.
Yeah.
Oh, can I help you? Just looking.
Yep.
And so I've actually shared this with a lot of people. What if in the retail space and the whole retail industry, they were trained to say one thing? Hey, just out of curiosity, have you been in our store before?
Yeah.
You can't put a wall up. There's no like, no, I've never been in this location before. Great. Well, I'll just be unloading some boxes on aisle 6 if I can help you. And I kind of walk away, and then you kind of gravitate. Well, I'm actually looking for, that's on aisle 16 near, toothpaste or whatever it is. And so a lot of that is the approach. So just out of curiosity is a game changer to have conversations with people, the networking space.
Do you practice it all? Like, I got to imagine that you like talking to your hairstylist.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert in my personal life.
Like when I'm getting my hair cut, I'm like, oh, I wish I could write on that paper. Don't talk to me. And not because I think I'm better or anything. It's just I don't know how to do the small talk part,
Well, and so it's interesting because I learned a couple decades ago that every business group needs, it's just kind of a cliche, but they would say every business group needs a bartender and a hairdresser. I didn't really care for the analogies, and we're like, why is that? Because they know everything that's going on in town. They know everybody's stuff, good stuff, bad stuff, who's starting businesses, opening, closing businesses, failures, bankruptcies. So I agree with you in that particular sense. But it's just asking a question. I mean, I could meet you at an event, and again, in my personal life, completely different. But I come to an event, I didn't know the people sitting next to me. And I was like, hey, just out of curiosity, who invited you today? How'd you hear about this?
Yeah.
Oh, well, this or that person or Jeff. And so can you see how that would just...
Would you say that most of your, in meeting new people, most of them is just store something in the back of your brain? Most people you'll probably never talk to again, but maybe some... Or are you looking for people for your roster, as it were, just another person to fill a slot for somebody who may need them one day?
Okay, so it's interesting.
And the reason I ask is because obviously, I mean, I don't think there's any any villains in anybody's own story, right? But I'm also always hyper conscious of not trying to be the guy who's just looking to get something, right? Like, oh, good, I need to go there. So what can you do for me? And I think because of that, I'll even hold back and not go talk to people because I don't want to come off as somebody who's just looking to get something. And I take it too far to a point where I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody and have them feel like I'm just trying to extract.
So full transparency.
Yeah.
The first 2 times I met you, I was extremely intimidated by you.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Just kidding.
I'm telling you, like I was just, and I know that might sound.
It's just standoffish, right? I come off like I don't want to talk to you.
No, not at all. It had nothing to do with that. Because when I learned about your success and your business and you started this other business and how it was just exponentially growing, and then I'd see you speak somewhere else 9 to 10 months later, and then I saw you speak one more time. I mean, each time I became more comfortable to approach you as I did the other day. But the first 2 times I met you, I was like, this guy's potentially young enough to be my son. And he's one of the few people that's crushing it, that all these social influencers talk about crushing it when they're, living somewhere where, they don't profess to what they're not really owning up to what they are. And so I was intimidated by that with you. So, I think I don't go to an event with the goal of how many people I'm going to meet. But I do want to, I want to answer your previous question and then this one. The previous question, I set a goal to go to an event to make 3 new contacts. 3.
Okay.
That's it. I could be guns loaded. I could have 50 business cards in my pocket. I'm fresh. I'm ready to go. Women that I've trained and consulted with over the years, they have a purse full of business cards. They're ready to work the room. And then they go hang out with the 2 people that they know and they talk and they meet maybe 1 or 2 people and then they leave. Yeah. Their son has soccer practice or something.
So is there some criteria for the 3? Do you want to get 3 numbers? You want to just talk to 3 new people?
I just want to meet 3 new people. And so I might go up to someone and say, is there anybody in the room that that I could possibly meet? I don't always say that. It just depends on the conversation. Hey, who is someone here that you think I should meet? And people literally used to grab my arm and just help me work the room. There's a book. There's a lady that wrote the book. She's from California. Her name is Susan Rowan. Susan is a little dynamo lady and very successful. She wrote the book, How to Work a Room. Yeah. And I saw Susan speak about 15 years ago. And I went up to her after the seminar was over and she sold some of her books. And I went up to her and I said, Susan, you literally changed my life in one aspect. And she goes, why is that? And I said, we used to buy your audiobook on cassette by the cases. And we would give them out to our leaders on how to work a room. And my son was in an event last week and he texted me and he goes, hey, Dad, I'm working the room. I learned from the best. And I literally went on Amazon and sent him a link to Susan's book. And I said, this is the best. Yeah. This is the lady that has taught the world how to work a room. And so, but I don't have any hidden agendas with that. I mean, I set a goal to exchange contact information with at least 3. So guess what? What if I only have 1? Is it worth my time to go to the event? Sure. Yeah. But I think people go to events with this false expectation that I'm going to add 20 new people to my Google contacts. Really, Kyle, honestly, you weren't even in my phone. Yep. You were in a text thread from Sean. Yep. If you noticed, I had to type his name in. I added you to my phone 4 days ago. You were but you weren't a contact because I didn't feel worthy enough to be able to reach out to you because of your success, and who am I to enter your world? And I'm shooting straight to you.
I appreciate that.
I mean, honestly, I'm just telling you, literally, that's why you weren't in my phone yet. And I want everybody to understand, everybody you meet doesn't deserve to be in your phone. They don't need to be in your phone. But I also kind of test people. I want to see if people are going to follow up with me. Yeah. Now, I'm in the follow-up business, and that's been my world. But sometimes I want a month or 6 weeks to go by, And I want that stack of business cards from that expo or that trade show to just get cold, and then 6 months from now they'll do the annual purge and they'll throw it away and say, I never talked to that guy. I remember meeting him or something in some studio. But do you see how most people think?
Yeah.
They're not in it for cultivating connections and relationships. People want to meet more people, but they never follow up with the people that they meet. And until they change what they're doing, you need to stop going to events.
That's all. One of the things I enjoy doing most at events, honestly, is because I've been able to meet some people and do some networking and make some friendships out of it. But what I like doing is getting to an event and having a buddy and be like, hey, you got to meet this guy. And then I'll just drop them off at each person else that I know.
That's it.
Because it's exciting and watching them make the connection, and then I can just go kind of stand over to the side. But I like the idea of, okay, I want to meet 3 new people, and probably all 3 will, just – there won't even be a spark, but maybe somebody or whatever it is. Yeah, it's good to know, like, going into stuff, because I think if you go and then you just sit there, or you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten, right? So eventually just say, there's no point in me going to these networking events because I don't do anything there.
So there's just a quick analogy there. I learned this from a lady in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's probably been 25 years ago. She called it the half cup rule. Now, it's different with bottles of water in today's world, but it's called the half cup rule. Whatever was in the beverage, whatever it was, whether it was wine or water or Coke or soft drink, didn't make any difference. Lemonade, tea. We drink a lot of sweet tea in the South.
Yep.
She would go to every event, and whatever they were serving, she would always have it half or a little bit less than half. This is brilliant. I've never heard this from anybody ever. And she called it the half cup rule. And she would work the room, and she'd be going around the room, and you need to meet this person. Kyle, I want you to talk to this lady over here and meet this person over here. And, it's kind of small talk. And she'd say, excuse me, I'm going to go refresh my drink. Yeah. And that's how she would do it the whole night I watched her do it for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's brilliant. She goes, yeah, it's my half cup rule.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was so that way it was an easy way to politely step out. So you're already doing it. And how does it make you feel when you do that?
Oh, it's awesome.
It gives you a sense of what?
Because it feels good, because actually it's like doing a favor for 2 people at once, because they could both use each other. They could both be benefited from knowing each other, and then I get to have just brought them together, and I get to feel like I did something and kind of leave, which is
exit stage left. You step out. And it does. It gives you this feeling of this euphoric feeling inside, like, hey, I've helped someone today. I've helped someone make a connection. Someone just gave me a connection in California for my daughter, for her career. And I was very grateful for that. It was a personal conversation a couple weeks ago in person, and you just never know where that can lead. And so I sent it to my daughter, and I said, hey, follow up with this person and use this person's name. So it's a sense of belonging, but a sense of contribution. And so, I try to educate the world that most people aren't going to follow up with you. And here's the reality of it is, and I've really tried to teach my son this because he used to come to trade shows and events with me. Most people you meet, Kyle, are never going to follow up with you.
Yep.
And you just have to know that, and then there's no expectation. If you go into something or go into an event or attend something, and you're going to be the one to follow up. And I learned that from some master networker people that were very good at teaching me. If you give a business card, you must get a business card.
Yeah.
Because the person that has the card is in control of the network.
Right.
And I could give you 36 stories of people that make lots of money in their business because I followed up with them. And I've helped them grow their business through referrals or connections or introductions or partnerships because I followed up with them. And most people just don't.
I want to switch gears. I wanted to ask you about something that kind of came up there. And, I don't mean to be doom and gloom and in asking these kind of things. But what I noticed early on, it was a couple of years ago, masterminds were I had my own mastermind. It was called The Hive.
I remember.
Did you come to that ever?
I came to your event.
The Hive, absolutely.
That was the second time I ever saw you, and I was intimidated. Yep. I was like, I can't talk to that guy. He's out of my league.
Well, you would have been you're still out of my league in terms of connecting. I would have loved for you to come up. But what I'm saying is it was just everybody had their own mastermind. Everybody was just doing it and being up there and talking. And I was new to the scene of even networking. I had a successful business by that point. You know, we were doing by that point 2 years ago. It was about $30 million a year we were doing it with performance windows. And I was like, I should be talking to people. I want to be able, and I'd meet these people who were saying these things on stage. And I'm by no means a business guru at all. I wouldn't call myself a savant. It's just, but I've been through the process of building something from zero, and this year we should do about 85 million. So I've learned, you learn lessons along the way. And when guys would talk, I'd be like, that doesn't add up. But okay, maybe I'm wrong. And then as these couple of years have gone on, it's gotten harder to do things. You'd watch all these guys just fall off. As you're making connections, and you've been in plenty of business situations, you've been in big business. I'm sure you've seen some of what I'm talking about. As you make connections and you see these guys talk big and you realize that they're not, how do you pick apart if they're not the real deal? And how do you guard yourself from making connections with somebody that could harm them, introducing them to your mother, as it were?
Well, I ask a lot of questions. The only way you get to know people is by asking questions. And, you know, again, listening versus talking. But people will tell you really what you usually want to know or find out if you just ask enough questions. Hey, just out of curiosity, if you were to move, where would you go next? Hey, just out of curiosity, before the window business, what did you do? Tell me what you've done in your background. Where do you see yourself in a year? And if they say, well, I'm going to 10X my business and this, like, I already know they're full of hype.
Yeah.
Because they've been sold a bill of goods from a bunch of influencers. Listen, that's a different rant or discussion, but this is how many people can 10X their business in the world.
Yep.
It's about this many people, because most people don't have the money to 10X their business. They don't have the staff, the leadership, the team to do it. But you have all these people that talk about 10Xing and doubling. I mean, not doubling, 10Xing your business.
Yeah.
You know, I work for an $18 billion company, and our founder many years ago taught the leadership in the early 90s. He said, if we could grow by double digits every year, 15 to 20% every year, and what's going to happen every 5 years? And every 5 years, we're going to close to double our business.
Yeah.
And I watched it happen, and I was part of it. And so, and it's just, it's realistic expectations, but there's no need to pump it up and profess something that you're not. You know, I learned another phrase many years ago is that you can't impart to others what you don't possess yourself.
Yeah. Can't convert past your own level of conversion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have this amazing team. How many employees do you have?
Performance about 300.
Yeah, like that just makes my head spin. Like, you own this building and you've got this meeting room and all these sections, and I'm going, I've never been in that world. And you have a team of people that report to you and your leadership. That's amazing, Kyle, like that. And I'm not giving you kudos. You're the last entrepreneur here in our city that needs another compliment, because documentation beats conversation. You're a quiet guy and you just steadily go out and just grow and grow and grow without bragging about your wares and your success. And it, honestly, that's probably where some of your success comes from.
Let me ask you a question. So I'm a father. You're a father. Just one son?
One of each.
Oh, one son, one daughter.
Yep.
I got one son, two daughters. It sounds like you've been able to instill your son's coming to you for advice and going to all these in networking and excited to tell you and all those things. How did you instill that love in him? How do you teach him to do? Here's an analogy I give a lot of the time. Is Mike Tyson, he once talked about, his son came to him and said, I want to be a boxer. He said, no, you don't. You're going to get into the ring with a guy like me who grew up terrible, and I'm a monster. You grew up the son of a millionaire, right? For all of us, what I've seen a lot of times when guys have success, it's because we had to. We were up against a rock and a hard place. We swam to the island. We burned the boats. When you've had that success and your son's been able to have it, how do you instill that same desire for him to break the wheel when the wheel feels broken already?
Well, I remember when he was younger, we would fly out west for a ski trip for spring break or Christmas, New Year's holidays. And there would be the home show. The home show would happen twice a year, sometimes in January and sometimes in March. And if the home show was in town while we were here, I would email my clients and I'd say, hey, we're meeting Friday night at 5:30 at the entrance, and I'm going to teach y'all how to work a room. I'm going to teach you how to work a trade show, not a room.
Yeah.
How to work an expo. And sometimes I'd have 6 people, and I think the most I ever had was 20. But I looked at it as an event, and I'd drag my son along. I mean, my son's like, he's 9 years old.
Yeah.
8 years old, 9 years old. It's Friday night. We're at the home show. And when does the home show end on a Friday night? 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
They're literally turning out the lights, and I'm working the aisles while the last exhibitors are there. And he's like, Dad, I'm on vacation. Like, this is my spring break. I'm just like, son, I got to work. Like, I got to make the house payment and your school. And I'd have it. I mean, we took a couple pictures of him, and I remember that when social was newer. And I'd have a stack of business cards, and I'd be like, "What were you doing on a Friday night?"
Yeah.
This was me with my son at 9:55 working the Sandy Expo or whatever it was. And as a parent, as your kids get older, you'll learn this. We don't realize what's going to stick with him and what's not. But he remembers those things. He remembers the follow-up. And he went to this event 2 nights ago, a career conference, and he said, Dad, I've got 16 follow-ups that I need to follow up and send 16 emails out to people that I met. And 3 or 4 of them remembered me from, last spring, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes me feel good because I'm like, you're either standing out from everybody in the room or you're blending in with everybody in the room. And so that's my comment on that.
What are some common mistakes you see? Here's something I'll say about Finnegan. Finnegan's one of my good friends. What I'll tell him sometimes is I'll even bust him a little bit because Finnegan sees the best in everybody, right?
No question.
Yeah, he'll make a connection for me, and I'll tell him, okay, but Finnegan, I really need this one thing that I'm asking for, so do you just like the guy, or is he the guy? And he'd be like, oh, maybe that's not the guy. Let me get you a different guy, right? How do you take things with a grain of salt? Do you see the best in everybody? How do you do your sifting of wheat and tares in terms of being able to make those connections?
Say that again?
Your sifting of wheat and tares. Let's say somebody high-end says, hey, Dan, I need this connection. I need to find somebody to do this thing for me. 3 guys. How do you decide who's best?
Which one? Okay, that's a good question.
Because you obviously want to be able to make a good connection for this person who trusts you and needs something. You don't want to just base off of personality. You want to base off of somebody who's real. How do you, when you're meeting people, obviously you ask questions, but how do you make those decisions on who's the real deal and who's not?
Well, I learned many years ago also that you can't build a reputation on what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so I watch what people do. And sometimes what people do it screams so loud I can't hear what they're saying because I'm watching what they're doing, and they keep going to events and events and events, and they're on social media and posting on LinkedIn and Facebook. But yet I left him a voicemail 3 weeks ago and 1 text 2 weeks ago, and they still haven't called me back. Yeah. And I just laugh at that.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
I do hate getting left on red. I'm like, all right, well, you will come calling and ask me for something. Do you have any pettiness in you? I mean, Dan, this isn't confession hour, but do you have any pettiness in you when somebody has left you on red or just ignored you, and then they come calling and asking for help? And saying, I don't know.
Well, sometimes, because I don't know the situation. Someone could have a death in their family or this, and they've gotten into their habits of social media or whatnot. But I don't look at it like that. But how do I decipher between the top 3? Let's just say this: in my business life, in 3 decades, I met over 150 financial advisors.
Yeah.
I probably knew 120 of them on a first name basis at that time in my life where I would see them consistently. Some of them I really liked a lot. Some of them I trusted immensely. I can count on one hand how many of them I ever would have used myself.
Yeah.
And I can count on two hands how many I ever would have referred. Sometimes people prefer a female in that industry just based on comfort level, or a single mom or divorce or something like that. But, I just watched transactional people, and it was all about the chase and the transaction, and they weren't in it for the relationship, or they're returning in their business. And so to answer your question, I ask questions, and I kind of test people. And if people if they can't follow up with me, they're surely not going to get a referral from me, because if they can't follow up with me, I know they're going to drop the ball of that referral. And like you said, I can't put my reputation on the line. I mean, the biggest thing is when you give someone a referral or an introduction, you're putting a little bit of your reputation on the line.
Big time.
And I don't remember where it was, but Sean and I had a microphone together or something, and he said, for me, I just want to see how people follow through. If I give somebody one or two introductions and they don't follow through, he goes, they're off my list. They don't get any more introductions.
Yeah.
And that's not the guy you want to do that with
Definitely,
Sean.
Of course.
You want to stay on his list because of who he knows and the credibility. And, it just takes time to cultivate that. We live in a microwave society. That's part of it. We want to click and we want to have something from Amazon at 9 tomorrow morning.
Yep.
You can't walk into a room with 25 people and say, here I am, trust me. Give me your referrals, give me your introductions. I'm looking to get connected to so-and-so. I mean, I learned many years ago that you could meet people faster through groups than anything else you could do. And so find a group, be part of a group somewhere. If it's a civic group, it doesn't matter what it is. You can meet people faster through groups than anything else you can do.
I mean, and we're getting close to the end here, but to me, this is also fascinating. It's the same way like Garrett Clark, who works here at Bad Bet and he was managing partner over there at Silicon Slopes. He's had hundreds of podcasts, and so he's got this giant sample size of CEOs and different things. And so, he could really write out of this, this list of different factors. But, you've got this giant book, as it were, of connections and people you've met, and you've met every type. So if I had 3 hours, I'd sit here and ask you, well, what do you think about this type of person, this type of person, this type of person? Let me give you two different kinds of people that I see a ton of. And what I love is that you said you've got 5 financial advisors that you would use of the hundreds, right? What's your opinion on business coaches? And this isn't to offend anybody, but there's a lot of business coaches out there.
Are you sure you want to ask me that question?
I want to know because
I could really get attacked.
I see so many of them, and it's the same as financial advice. I get, obviously, with what I have going on, I get approached by financial advisors all the time, and it's always, hey, Kyle, you want to go to lunch? And I'm like, I would love to go to lunch with you, brother, but I don't want to. I said, I'll go to lunch, but let's not talk business. Let's just be homies and catch up from our days of blah, 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 blah. Business coaches, they always come in and they'll hit with a couple keywords, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. I like that thought. But I want to hear, you've seen hundreds of them now. Give me your opinion on them.
That's really hard for me to answer public. Can we turn the cameras off?
Answer in a political way, but what are some of the red flags you see?
Okay. So truthfully, many, many years ago, there was an organization called IIB, and they recruited very well. And they were called Independent Business Advisors. And they were, I don't know if they were licensees or 1099s, but they were in my market of Knoxville and Chattanooga and Atlanta, and they recruited very well. And I met some really amazing people through them. There's a lady named Judy, and she actually came on my team, and she was a trainer, and she worked in franchising and KFC for over 3 decades. And she was an independent advisor with them for many years before the coaching thing came along. I'm giving you a quick history.
Yeah.
And so then there was another person named Ed Engel, and he from Idaho, and they just oozed with credibility. They just had presence about them. And so my experience in that industry started with business advisors, okay, that were working under umbrella of a national company. And then the whole life coaching thing started.
Yeah.
And I used to joke about it because I would travel between Tennessee and Atlanta and Utah. And I would go to Utah and I would say, y'all have more life coaches than we have CVS and CVS and Walgreens in Tennessee. And we have one of those at every fifth red light.
Yeah.
And people would laugh, and I would say, about the coaches. And there's a difference in a life coach and a business coach. And I just, there's no disrespect there. I mean, sure, coaches, athletes, all that stuff. Exact same thing as financial advisors. I've probably met in the maybe triple digits of 80 to 100 coaches of some sort. I could count on maybe 3 hands how many of them that I would ever either personally use myself or I would recommend. Someone named Lane, someone named Dan, someone named Mark, someone named Bill. Those are just 4 that come to top of mind for me. And I think there's someone that I know that kind of did that on the side, and I met him in a men's support group many years ago. And I saw one of his videos, and he's very direct. And he said, next time you're talking to a business coach or a life coach, ask them one thing. Send me your bank statement. Yeah. Send me your P&L statement. Send me your personal financial statement. I mean, this guy was really bold. He's in the military and stuff, Kyle, and I was just like, whoa, Kyle, that's pretty direct. Yeah. He goes, I'm just tired of the hype and the flaky and the fluff of people putting out all this content, trying to teach people something that they're not doing themselves. And again, I learned this many years ago, you can't impart to others what you don't possess yourself. And so, for me, sometimes people want to tap in. When I exited one of my businesses 8 years ago, it was actually 8 years ago today. In fact, I left another business. And people encouraged me to become a coach. Yeah. They were like, Dan, you really would be good in the entrepreneur space. And I said, listen, my gift is the masses. My gift is group dynamics. It's really not one-on-one. And that's just my space. And so that's pretty direct. That's a direct question. I've never seen, Kyle's the only person I've ever seen that's been that direct to say, okay, you want to coach me? You want me to pay you $3,000 a month or $10,000 a year, whatever it is? I want to see your financial statement.
It's a beautiful point. I think it applies to a lot of the influencers. A lot of that content that goes out is like that's a tough part. Is for when I see people giving advice on fatherhood who have no kids, or give advice on financials who their financials aren't put together, or how you can grow my business. And that's not to say that I know everything, but I know enough to know when somebody needs to understand from having done all the things that I've had to do, right? It's like, to quote a movie, right? Good Will Hunting. You've seen Good Will Hunting? Robin Williams is sitting on the bench with Matt Damon, and he says, do you think I profess to know all about your life because I read Oliver Twist? I can't just know because I read about it in a book somewhere. I also have to have experienced it and done it and known the pitfalls instead of just telling you, regurgitating what I've read here and there and there. So I love that you said all that. Honestly, this is conversations that I think we will have over a long time. I mean, we've hit the end here, but if you could, on the way out here, if you could give one piece of advice to, I want to know who I would want to even give the advice to. Not to somebody who's looking to go out there and connect, because the advice always there is give more than you take. I mean, if you could really give some advice to somebody who just feels like they don't belong in a certain room and they're in there, how do they make themselves belong?
Well, that's a tough question. How do they make themselves? You have to earn it. I mean, you have to. Sean doesn't invite me to 90% of the rooms that he's in because I haven't earned that with Sean. And really, do I experience FOMO? Like, hey, would I love to meet some of those people or just be part of the conversation? Have I asked him? I don't want to wear out my welcome because I'm still in the like stage.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I'm still in the like stage with Sean and the know stage. Like, he likes me, he knows me, but is there a deep trust there? And we're just talking. He'll probably hear this, but I don't feel like I've earned that trust yet with him to be invited in some of those rooms.
Honestly, I know I said that was my last question, but what I get from you sometimes is because in doing my podcast, I've had some big boys on the podcast. Not just this podcast, but my other podcast. I met heroes of mine in the UFC, right? And what I've come to realize is that every dude is just a dude. You know, he's just some guy. I mean, whether they've got 200 million or they're this world champion, just some guy. Do you feel like you experienced some kind of imposter syndrome? Because honestly, you're doing it. I mean, you've got talents that I aspire to. So when you say, well, I didn't know if I would be even okay to come up and talk to you, I'd love for people to come up and talk to me because, my own personal hang-ups kick in. I can't go talk to people. Do you feel like you experience imposter syndrome? Because honestly, talking to you, Dan, and knowing you just a little bit, you shouldn't. Yeah, it's fun talking to you. You're a connector, and that's a skill that people don't have.
Well, we're our own worst critic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we are. And I'll tell you, I got a text message 2 days after that event, Saturday, here at your office, and someone was kind of edifying me in a text, and he said, "You are a vault of knowledge." And I just can't get that out of my head. I was just like, man, I'm just deeply humbled that you would even say that to me.
Yeah.
Someone that was there on Saturday said that to me. You are a vault of knowledge. And wow, I mean, I was pretty humbled about that. I mean, I've spent 35 years in business and around leadership. I've been around personal development my whole career, basically, since after college, and just becoming a student of personal development, not just a seminar goer, but embracing it and learning that the person that holds the marker makes the money. The person in front of the room can be the biggest influence, but you have to earn up in that. I didn't sign up for leadership. That wasn't my major in college, man. I didn't study any of that, but I just grew into it because I wanted to aspire to be like other people.
I love it. Dan, I think we're going to have a lot of conversations, but I want you to tell people where to find you, socials, and
I'm easy. Just look me up on LinkedIn, Dan Rawls, Rawls. You'll see a picture of a snow skier. It says "The fortune's in the follow-up." My friend Dallin put that up there for me. But, just reach out to me, send me a personal message, and you never know. It takes one phone call, one text, one voicemail, one WhatsApp message, one message. I could tell you countless stories about how I've met people. One of my closest friends, Jeremy in St. George, I met Cos Green on Facebook 4 years ago. He was on a dive trip in Cozumel, and just like you just never know.
Love it. Dan, thanks for being on. I'm excited, dude. Thank you so much.
Leave it to Deever.
That's the one.
Brilliant, man. Brilliant.